This interview is with Presly Byington, interviewing for the Oklahoma Historical Society is Roger Harris. Today's date is July the 9th, 2003, and the location is in Presly's home in Idabel. Now, where were you born and when?
I was born here in Idabel
Yeah.
in 1965.
Yeah. And your folks' names are?
Helen and Ralston Byington.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was born up over at Iron Stop, and my dad was from the Sobel and Boswell area. That's where that group of Byingtons come from.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, back a long time ago, the men followed the women. They kind of joined their clans,
Mm-hmm.
and it was kind of still the same way back in those days. And so whenever they got married, he followed her,
Oh.
and that's how they wind up here in Idabel.
Oh, okay. Now, the other family names going back?
My mom's, hers is Austin, and I have no idea how they come about with that one, but as far as Byington goes, there was a missionary preacher by the name of Cyrus Byington, and what we understand is that his people came from England. The original name was Boynton, and after Boynton got to Ohio, whenever he come to the United States, for some reason he changed it to Byington, and then he had a son, and his name was Cyrus Byington, and he became a missionary. And that was during the time whenever they were sending out missionaries to help with the supposedly spread Christianity to them heathen Indians, as they called it back then.
Yeah.
But Indians were very spiritual people. It's just that they weren't, wasn't in the same part as Christianity. But it all kind of led to the same thing, with the beliefs that there was a God or a great spirit, as most of them called it, and a lot of them called him just grandfather, which was the wise one. And anyway, he was appointed to Mississippi with the Choctaws, and after the removal from Mississippi to Oklahoma, he just came with them. He called them his beloved Choctaws. And he was such a big influence on Choctaw people that there was a lot of them that adopted his last name whenever it came about to saying that, that they had to have a last name to identify them, because back in those days, most of them just had one name. But whenever they decided that they needed last names, a lot of them adopted his name, in which a lot of them adopted names from the Bible also, because it's primarily because of his teachings.
Now, what did your dad do for a living?
He was a heavy equipment operator. I understand that he could operate just about anything that he jumped on. And my mom, she worked in a sewing factory.
Oh, she did?
There was a place over here called Kelwood. She worked there from the time that I can remember.
And what did they make there?
They made jeans.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And then it closed down, and then she was driving a bus with a little Dixie at the time of her death. She got they said that it was hereditary. It was called bronchiectasis. And so every now and then, we in the family go and get checked over to see, make sure that we don't have it or anything. But, they said that it's supposed to kind of like skip a generation, but, it's good to go get checked anyway.
Did you go through school here in Idabel?
Yeah, I graduated, started over there at George School, which was less than half a mile from where I grew up, and eventually graduated over here at Idabel High School. Went to college over Southeastern for about a year, and went to school out here at the E.T. Dunlap Center.
And when did you join the Forest Service?
This was about, I'd say it was probably 11 years ago. It was through a BIE program. There was a lot of Indian people that had went through a program for learning how to fight fire. And it was never a permanent job. So, and as far as Indians go, any job was as good as any. And so, and plus Indians are, this is just the way that they were taught, was that, you take care of the land. because they see it as we're not owning the land. It's just that it's something that we were here to take care of for all the time that we're here. And so that there's primarily a reason that they taken up that particular job. And anyway, there was a BIA program, and they went through the state, since the state at that time wasn't, I guess they didn't have enough resources, and in order to get help, they contracted through the BIA, and the BIA paid the Indian firefighters, and eventually one transferred out, here and there, and I slipped into that slot, and which was 2 years later, which became a temporary spot, and then it led into a full-time position. So I've been there 11 years, but I hadn't been full-time but for about 7 or 8.
When did you fight your first fire?
I guess that was probably around about 1990. I was on the White Mountain Apache Reservation, and it was a long ways over there.
Yeah, it is.
I spent July the 4th on the football field.
Oh boy.
That was my first fire, like I said, and by the time we got there, it had rained and it was foggy, but we still wind up on the side of the mountain raking fire lines, but I mean, it was pretty much out. And then after they declared it out, then they shipped us back to Albuquerque at the Mississippi. There's an Indian college there, and that's where the base was at the time, where the they call it, the station, the base station area where all the firefighters were put up during that time. And they shipped us back there until it was time to bring us back home. But we spent 2 weeks out there.
Did they give you much training, or?
The training lasts a week, and they show lots of films. They show a lot about survival. Showed how they want fire lines dug, and running chainsaws, and how they use dynamite to make fire lines whenever it's not accessible for a human or a dozer to get in certain places. And sometimes dynamite works real well, and then they use dozers, and then they use hand crews. And I mean, it's a rough job.
Yeah. Was that the summer of the year when you went out to White Mountain?
It was the following year. No, wait a minute. I took the training in February of, I believe it was in '89. It might have been '90. And then I went out that following June. So yeah, it was the very same year.
Yeah, and it was summertime though when you were
at
the first fire there.
Yeah, I believe it was in the middle of July.
Yeah.
So it was extra hot.
Yeah. And had you been out in that part of the country?
No,
Yeah.
I had never been that.
Yeah.
In the western part. Whenever I started out Choctaw dancing as a kid, we always went in the eastern direction,
Right.
because that's primarily where the Choctaws were from. And you had Choctaws and Chickasaws and Seminoles and all them others in the east, and that's where we did most of our dancing. But I had never been west.
Now, what else does your job involve besides, obviously firefighting is always important, but?
We take care of the buildings that are around there. We do lots of seedling survivals, which is, whenever they go out and plant new pine trees, we go out and do a seedling survival to see how many's surviving and how many's died. Or sometimes some people let cattle get in there, or they didn't know that the cattle got in there sometimes, and they tromp them down or nip the tops off of them and kill them. And so we go in there and do a seedling survival, to see how many's making it. And plus, whenever our tire ladies are out, off on vacation or whatever, or on sick leave or something, and we're on a higher fire danger, we have to go set up in the tower to fill in their slot. And then if there is a fire, sometimes we have to come down and then go help a crew member fight the fire. And plus we do a lot of Smokey the Bear programs, which I done one just this morning with the daycare center. And
you have to do that in uniform and everything?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, when you climb the towers, those are all ladders, aren't they?
Yeah, it's a stairway. They run up about 100 to 125 foot.
So it's not a ladder then, it is a stair. Right?
Yeah, it's a stairway, yeah.
It's
And the cab is like a 6x6 building. Looks like
Yeah.
a little house on top of stilts, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a long ways up, and it's not real good whenever you're afraid of heights.
Yeah. Should be for me. Is it? It's not comfortable up there either, temperature-wise, is it?
Oh no, not whenever it's real hot. But they have gotten to where they did put air conditioners in some of them,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps out a lot. But you've got so many windows around there that it's still hot.
Mm-hmm.
You can have the air conditioner on and it still be 80-something degrees.
Sure.
But it's a lot cooler than whatever it would have gotten without the air conditioner.
How long do those shifts last up there?
Usually whenever we're having, what we call a regular fire season, we run, we start out what we call fire duty. It runs from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, if we've got more fires that, that's, just taken off or whatever, and they'll extend it up to 6 o'clock. And if it goes past that, then we'll go to 7 or 8. And whenever it's real hot and things like that, we usually start out at 10 and run to about 7 o'clock in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
So it just all depends upon how the fire danger,
Right.
what the situation is at the time.
And how do you communicate from up there?
Radio, we have walkie-talkies, and sometimes we've got mobile radios.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, you've been involved in some dangerous fires.
Yeah, we were in Kentucky about 7 or 8 years ago, and we didn't know it, but there was a fire that was coming up one side of the mountain, and we didn't know it, and we finally made it up to the top, and come to find out that that once we just broke over to the other side and just held loose there, and it slowed down once it got there. About that time, the helicopters come through and dumping water on it, but it was scary enough. And then plus I was in this one in Thermopolis, Wyoming, back in August 11th, 2000. That's whenever I lost my partner, Jim Burnett.
Mm-hmm. Now, Jim was from where here?
He was born in Clayton.
Mm-hmm.
He grew up in Baptiste, and him and his wife lived in Hatfield, Arkansas at the time. She was a school teacher over in Mena.
Yeah.
And we had been out on 3 assignments that year, and we had been in a little place, a little town they called Matitsi, and after we had that one contained, then there was a fire over there on the Shoshone and Arapaho Reservation, and it had been going for about 2 days, and they said they took us back to Worland, over there to where we were assigned, and they said, well, we've promised them that we've blown them 2 engines. And our engine and another one, no, it was 3 engines. Our engine and 2 others were assigned to go over there, and they was going to keep one there in Worland for an initial attack. And we made it over there. I mean, it was way back up on the reservation where, there was hardly anything there except the prairie lands.
Mm-hmm.
And, it wasn't really hurting anything back in there, but, that's our job, is to protect. And there was bad radio communication. They had no repeaters. They had a man that was on the side of the mountain who was acting as a human repeater. He was just transferring messages.
Yeah, repeaters where you're too far from the next radio. And
yeah.
Right. And
we didn't get word that they were backfiring down at the bottom of the hill. And we had gone over, after we had been sitting over on one part of the fire, and they assigned us to another place. So we made it over there, and they told us, well, so we're just protecting this line right here. And so we went on up just a little ways from where the Thermopolis Volunteer Fire Department was. And we got turned around, just in case anything should happen, that we could head back down the hill. And like I said, we didn't know that they were backfiring down at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And whenever it shot up, it came up pretty fast. I believe they said that the flame lengths were 25 foot tall, and the surface winds were like 45 mile an hour. So, but
now, how did you escape that?
Well, whenever Jim said, I'm going to get out and spray some water, and he told me, he said, stay in here. and we had the windows rolled up because we had the air conditioner on. And he got out and he fired up that pump, and the pump run for probably 10 seconds at the most, and it had so much smoke that it choked out that little engine that was running the pump. And so he hollered at me and told me to back up. And whenever I started to back up, I realized that the emergency brake was on. So I reached down and pulled the emergency brake and started to back up, and it probably backed up 5 to 10 foot, and then it died. And I think that was because of the smoke too that choked out that motor. And whenever I tried to start it, it wouldn't start. And whenever I looked up, that's whenever it had already taken over the truck. There was nothing but orange in front of me. And I'm assuming that that's the time that he ran. And my intentions was to run with him. And I jumped from the driver's side over to the passenger side. And I got the door open, and it's probably about that much. And before I could get my gloves and stuff on, the wind sucked the door shut. And so I just assumed that this is the way that I was going to die. And I sat there, and I could hear the air conditioner blow up. I heard the back tire on the truck blow up. And I finally sat there, just coming to reality that, this is possibly it. And then I remembered my fire shelter. So I got my fire shelter out, and I had a hard time getting it open. But I finally had to take my glove off, stick my finger in that little ring, and pull it open. And so I put my fire shelter on inside of the truck. And I could hear rocks and everything else being slung up against the truck. And I understand later that there was a big conversation going on. And I never heard anything. All I know that I was trying to survive. And
Conversation.
there was a conversation over the radio.
I see. Okay.
And I understand that it was during that whole time that Jim was looking for me. He told the people that he was talking to that we had gotten separated, and he was looking for me. And anyway, the Thermopolis Volunteer Fire Department had fought fire all the way up there, plus the helicopter dropped water. What I understand, I guess that was a lot of the noise that I heard. And the helicopter dropped water, and the Thermopolis Volunteer Fire Department fought fire all the way up there, and they opened up the door and got me out. And then they got me and put me in their truck. And then they left, and I had no idea where they went. And that's whenever I seen my radio sitting in the truck that they had just pulled me out of. And I went back down there, and I got the radio, and I called him. And I asked him, was he all right? He said, yeah. He said, I'm all right. He said, but what about you? That was his main concern. I said, I'm all right. I said, but this truck is burned up. I said, it's gone. And I don't remember what was said after that, but I also understand that somebody told me, said, well, then as long as you're all right, then I'm going on over to the other side. And what he meant by that, I don't know. But what I understand later was that after they had put me in the truck and they took off, that was whenever they found out that their truck was on fire. That's the reason why they left me, was to go fight fire on their own truck. So they pulled me out of one truck, one burning truck, and put me in another. But, they didn't know.
Sure. Yeah.
And so anyway, I spent the night in the hospital. And I guess it was adrenaline that was keeping me going. And I didn't understand that he had died right after I finished talking to him. Because I did hear someone in the helicopter say, we've got at least one fatality here. And, like I said, I didn't understand.
Right.
There was a lot of things that went on that I don't understand. And plus, we had our fallen firefighter dedication here in Broken Bow about, I guess it was April the 25th. And there was a Indian man, Roy Dorr from Montana, who came down. and he was the head of the investigation team. And while I was in the hospital, I spoke with him face to face, and I never remembered him.
Mm. Yeah.
And so, and there's, like I said, I've told my wife time and time again that, the mind is a wonderful thing. It made me forget a lot of things that I don't need to remember.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what helped me keep my sanity.
Yes.
The fact that there's some things that I don't need to remember.
Yeah. But you kind of honored Jim, didn't you? With,
Yes.
yeah.
That whenever we had made it back home, and they was talking about, we need to do something. Because, we had never, ever had a wildland firefighter killed in the line of duty.
Mm-hmm.
And we understood that there was a casting of the statue. It's called the Pulaski Man. And at the time there was only one. And it was at Boise, Idaho at the Interagency Fire Center.
Mm-hmm.
And the casting was still good enough to make another one. So we thought, we'll try to find out, see how we can get this. And we talked to a lady, and she said, yeah, we understood that it was $5,000. And then after it was made and everything, so we told them, everybody dug way down deep, and they come up with a little more than $5,000. And then whenever we got ready to send the money, there was a big misunderstanding that it was $25,000.
Oh my goodness.
And so I didn't let that stop me. I was with Jim. He was my supervisor, and he was the kind of guy that if he asked you to do something, it wasn't something that, that he wasn't willing to help you with.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he asked you to do something, it was something that he would do himself if he had the time, or, or whatever, and then plus he was in there helping you to begin with anyway.
Mm-hmm.
He was just that kind of guy.
Yeah.
And so whenever we thought that we couldn't make it, I went and talked to the Choctaw Nation and the Chickasaw Nation, and plus we had two of the we had a state representative and a state senator went through a program that helped us get $6,500.
Mm-hmm.
And plus we had lots of city businesses that donated. So we wound up with a little more than $30,000. So we got the money raised to get the statue, and had lighting and everything put up, and bought some rocks. Big boulders is what they are. And we had some engravings put on there about Jim. And then there's another one that honors all wildland firefighters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When was that dedicated about?
It was done on April the 25th.
Mm-hmm.
And
this year, was it?
Yes.
I was thinking that.
yeah, it took us 2.5 years to get everything together, but we got it. And then, about a week ago, I got a call from a man by the name of Bob Jacob from the Shoshone and Arapaho Reservation over there. And they've got a big boulder that they've had engraved on. And they've invited us to come up. They said, it's no hurry. Just whenever y'all can make it here at your convenience, that they would like to go up on the side of the mountain and have a dedication up there on the site where it happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's been pretty well honored.
Yeah.
And plus his name is at the National Fire Academy up there in, what's the name of the town? Emmitsburg, Maryland.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And we made it up there to the dedication over there too in 2001.
How long before you fought another fire after that?
I bet it was probably 4 to 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
Because the folks over at the office, whenever I got back, I begged the doctor to let me go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I just couldn't sit around the house and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, I begged him enough to let me go back to work. But he wouldn't let me fight fire, he wouldn't let me cut grass, he wouldn't let me do anything except do office work. And plus the guys there,
Sure.
they wouldn't let me go in either.
Sure.
And then whenever I went and talked to the respiratory therapist, he said, you can go on back and fight fire.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, be careful. And then whenever I did go back to fighting fire, got on the dozer and all of the guys out there, that's the first thing that they did was holler at me, "Are you okay?" They just wanted to make sure that I was okay with fighting fire, with everything that happened, because, they said, if you can't handle it, go on back down and we'll take care of it. That was their main concern, is, that I was all right with it.
Yeah.
And, and I had made up my mind that, that if I quit, then I've let it defeat me. And I wasn't about to let it happen. And so I stayed in there, and I'm still fighting fire.
No, that's good. That's good. Well, I appreciate you telling that story. That's a tough story. I appreciate it. Now, you said when you were a kid that you started dancing, and about when did you start?
I started whenever I was probably about 11 or 12 years old. I understand that whenever the Choctaws all left Mississippi and came to Oklahoma, that they pretty much left everything behind, except their language, education, and Christianity. That was pretty much the only things that they brought with them.
Right.
And there's a gentleman by the name of Gene Wilson. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
No,
He's a preacher, a Presbyterian preacher. And at the time, this here was back in the early 70s. And I understand that these churches that he was over had a certain amount of money that was set aside for cultural activities. And this is what he done. He got some of the elders and some of the deacons and all that were in the church that were Choctaw. And they went to Mississippi and learned these dances and learned the chanting, that, the singing that goes along with the dancing, and brought it back to Oklahoma. And a lot of it started out with them, with the kids. And that's where it started at. And I got the privilege of being one of the kids because, I grew up down the street from one of them. And, of course, I grew up as a Methodist, and all of them were Presbyterians. But I got asked to dance with them, so I was one of them that helped out on this. But, like I said, all that credit goes to Gene Wilson. And we kind of all grew up together, and even still today, whenever we see each other, and first thing they ask is, "Are you headed to Mississippi this year to the fair?" Because the Choctaws have a fair over there, and we used to go over there and dance with the Mississippi Choctaws. And so, we still have that little conversation: "Are you going to Mississippi to dance, or are you going to the fair?" And that was a big thing with us. And plus, Carl McKinney, one of them that I grew up with dancing, he's got his own dance group now, and those are all of his nieces and nephews and little cousins and all, and he has taught them the way that we were taught. Because, they said that, that whenever you go out to dance and whenever you're getting ready, take your time and do it right, because if it ain't done right, then it's not worth doing it. And, and they remind us that whenever we go out there to dance, that we are representing a whole tribe. And you go out there and be respectful. And that was one of the very first things that they taught us.
How did the Mississippi people, were they real receptive to the idea?
Oh yeah, they were real good about it. I mean, they accepted us into their homes. We went by, and talked to them. It's, a lot of times you go through there, it's like a tourist attraction of some sort. But whenever we go over there and tell them, what we're there for, and, they'd invite us into their homes, they'd feed us or whatever, or they would call someone from down the street that knew a certain chant or a dance or whatever, and they would call them people in, and they would come over, and we went over there and learned a few more dances from them, and they've got 3 or 4 different districts over there, and not all of them do the same type of dances. I mean, they've all got a certain amount that all of them combined do, except, in other districts, all of them's got a little bit of a different dance that each district has of their own.
Now, what did your family think of that?
They had no problem with it, even though I was the only one, because I was pretty much the youngest of the boys, and I got asked to do this, and and they had no problem with it.
Yeah.
And I just, and as growing up, and traveling and doing all the dancing is where I got my interest in the flute making. Because we went to lots and lots of powwows, and performed at different places, and I've always seen these little flutes, and I wondered how they were made.
Yeah. Now, did you see flutes in Mississippi?
Actually, I don't think I ever remember seeing a flute there.
Yeah.
It's the studying that I done later on about the flutes that where I come to find out that theirs was more like a whistle rather than a flute. But as long as it had holes in it to make different notes, then it would be considered as a flute.
Mm-hmm.
And the Choctaws only had 2 holes in their flutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that it was used by the medicine man. And the Choctaws were big stickball players.
Right.
And there's how they settled disputes. Or, little battles here and there. That was their game.
Or started disputes.
Yeah, or started dispute, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
And what they done was that each districts, or whoever was playing ball games, they went out and got a medicine man. Each team had their own medicine man. And they would go call out this medicine man, and his job was to blow his whistle and go by and cast good medicine upon his team's sticks and bless their players. And whenever the opposing team wasn't looking, his job was to cast bad spells upon their team. So, and and like I say, I guess it doesn't make any difference what tribe you're from. They were all superstitious people. And they had their own ways of their superstitions.
Yeah. And so the first flutes you saw and heard were mostly Western flutes? Or?
Probably Plains flutes, which is, right here where we're at now. The 6-hole Plains flutes.
Right.
And they were usually made out of cedar or some type of a hardwood, like a hickory or birch. A lot of them are made out of birch.
Did you visit with any flute makers to speak of?
I don't guess I ever did. The way I come to wind up making flutes is that probably about 10 to 12 years ago, there was a Methodist preacher here, and he was a silversmith. And I had an interest in silversmithing. Mm-hmm. So I went to his class, and then there was a gentleman that came in by the name of Ronnie Willison from out of Antlers. And he's, Indians are just this way, they don't like to fork out any money if they don't have to. So he was going to swap trade for trade, flute making for learning how to be a silversmith. Mm-hmm. And so the silversmith, Floyd Peters, the silversmith, said, okay. And then, I guess it was the following Tuesday night, the man who had taught Ronnie come in, and they invited Floyd to go with them, which would have been on it was a Monday night that he come in, and they were going out to make them on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. And so Floyd learned how to make them on Tuesday, and early Wednesday morning, he calls me up and he says, you have got to come over here. So I've got something to show you. And so I learned how to make flutes on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And, and I have been with it ever since, and I don't guess there's anybody who can say, well, my flute is tuned and his is not, and I've heard it, but I wish that they wouldn't, because, I can't see where anybody can say that, oh, well, his flute don't play right. As long as this man can make beautiful music come out of that flute, then he's doing something right. Yeah. And plus, way back in the old days, I've seen someone have these little boxes that you sit up there and you blow your flute, and so as soon as that light comes on, that's how I know whenever it's in tune.
Oh, yeah.
Long time ago, they didn't have these little boxes.
No,
they did it by their ear. And so, that's the way I see it. Is that, as long as he can make beautiful music come out of that flute, then he's doing something right.
Right. Now, the first one you made, what'd you make it out of?
Made it out of a switch cane. At that time, we were getting our cane from over there at just right there on the other side of Iron Stop. Mm-hmm. Right there where Iron Stop store is, there's a creek about 1.5 miles down the road. at the bottom of the hill. They had some pretty good sized cane there. And since then I've made it out of a little bit larger stuff. A lot of it's bamboo. For me, bamboo has got a more of a mellow, heavier bass sound to it, and that's what I like.
Native bamboo?
You know, I don't guess you can call any of them native, because I understand that the Japanese or the Orientals brought it with them whenever they came, because, you know, that was a part of their life, and they brought it with them. So, you know, I don't know if it's could be considered as native, because, you know, and there's more than 150 varieties of bamboo, and cane fits into it also.
Right.
So.
You cut the cane green, or?
Yeah.
And the bamboo too?
Yeah. Like right now, this time of the year, it's not real good to, it's not a good time to cut it now. Because you can set it out there, and I mean, it saps up the sap out of it pretty quick, and then it makes the walls of it thin. So it's better to wait till like in the fall and let it dry slow. And even, I've got some out there in the garage that I cut down here about 2 months ago, and still they're drying too fast, so the walls of them are getting kind of thin.
How do you slow them down, or do you have a way?
I don't guess there is any way, because whenever I cut them down in the fall, I take them out there and throw them in the yard, and just let them sit there till they turn brown. Go out there and turn them over, and let the other side sit out there for 2-3 weeks until it starts to turn brown. And then whenever I feel like it's about time, then I go out there and start cutting them up to whatever length that I want them. And they're not ever all the same length. I go out there and just kind of judge it by the length of my hand, and then do it this way, you know.
Yeah.
And so they're all never the same size.
Now, do you kind of did you learn that from the two fellows you were talking about earlier?
No, actually, they had a certain length that they liked and said, well, this here's, you know, this is tuned, you know, and all this kind of stuff here, you know, and for me, I got to messing with them, you know, and I found a sound that I liked. And plus, I was talking to a Creek lady, and her son was a flute maker. And I didn't ever know this until after I learned how to play a little bit, that the very first song that any kind of flute maker plays is Amazing Grace. And I done learned it by, and that was, comes to find out that that was the first song that I learned.
That's interesting.
And this lady was telling me about her son. Said that's how he tunes his flutes. That, you know, he plays Amazing Grace, that if it doesn't play, then it's not tuned for him. And I kind of picked up on that, and that's the first song that I play on a flute. And if it doesn't play Amazing Grace, then I don't give it to anybody. I don't sell it. I mean, it gets thrown away or whatever, you know. But it has to play Amazing Grace.
Now the little bird part, or what do you call that little part where the
some of them call it a tuner, and some of them call it a birdie. But, you know, either one's fine with me.
Yeah, well, get one of your flutes and show us what that looks like, would you please?
This here is your basic one. This one here.
Okay.
This one here is just your basic flute, kind of like the same one that I learned how to make whenever I first started, except this one's a little bigger. And this here's what we're talking about, is that little tuner right there. And all it is whenever I got more cane than I can use or whatever, we cut them off in little lengths about that long, about 3 or 4 of them, you know, and then what we do is we get it and put it on the ground, just stomp it and crack it, and that's how we get these little deals right here. And then I usually get them and stick it up there and just shave it off to where it fits this particular flute. And like I said, this one is just your little simple basic one. And this one here, this one was made for the fallen firefighter dedication. And this here is the same, except that, you know, it's made out of cedar, and it's used basically the same way as the other one is, except that I took a little time to make out a fetish, as they would call it, I guess. And this particular one's supposed to be a bear, if that's what it looks like to you.
Yeah, it does.
And this particular one, the cane itself was almost thrown away.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, boy, that one there sure does look nice. And I got it set over there to the side. I'm going to make one out of that later. And then I got to looking at it. I thought, boy, it's got 2 joints in there that'll have to be knocked out. And then I thought, well, I'm probably not going to use it, so I got to throw it in the trash. And then one day I come back home, and my wife and them were headed out, and I got to looking at it, so I thought, I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. And after I got finished with it, it had such a great sound to it that I thought, this is the one that I'm going to use for the dedication. And so that's what this particular one was made for.
Who did the beading?
I did the beadwork.
That's nice. It looks nice.
And the green, yellow, and brown on it, that's the color that the state of Oklahoma's forestry uses.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, since it was for the fallen firefighter dedication for the Oklahoma forestry,
Mm-hmm.
or for this particular one, you know, he was with Oklahoma forestry. So that's what colors I used on it.
Yeah. Now you usually make them with the bird's bill on the front.
Like this right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this here is what we call a duck bill.
Mm-hmm.
It's, like I say, you know, it's just a little bit extra decoration to put on there. You know, it doesn't have to be there. We can cut it off anywhere all the way up to this point right here, and this flute will still sound the same. Because right here where these holes are is where the flute ends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now you don't do anything to it except let it cure in the sun.
I let it cure in the sun, and then I make the flute, and then I get my little torch and I burn it.
You do?
And burning it makes it harder.
Really? Interesting.
What sap is left in there is pretty much stays in there and crystallizes and makes the cane harder.
Can you
and makes it last a little longer.
Can you tell the difference in the sound when you?
Not really.
Yeah.
It's got just a little bit, not much.
Yeah.
It's not much, you know, it's not so much that you can really tell a whole lot unless, you know, like I say, you know, I've been making them for quite a while, so I can tell when it does make a little bit of a different sound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now you tend to play it. Do you play it straight in front of you or slightly to the side?
It's like this.
That's great. That's great sound. Good sound. Do most of them you make have about that same warble, that same kind of beating sound?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I say, you know, after playing with them and finally finding a sound that I like, that's pretty much what most of them do have. You know? And like I said, you know, it's a certain sound that I like. And I guess most flute makers are the same way. They've got a certain sound that they like.
But that's not an unusual sound. I mean, that's not neither high nor low or anything like that.
No, it's kind of a haunting sound.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah, yeah. Well, can you make a little bit on that other one there?
Let's get this thing tuned up just a little bit.
What do you call that little half note where you kind of slip your finger?
You know, I'm not sure what they call that. It's just you just kind of slip it off of there,
Yeah.
and gives it just a little bit of a
It-
different sound, I guess.
Yeah, I see people, a few people playing, but not very many people play like that. It's interesting.
And
And what do you usually sell these things for?
these like this here, I usually get $30 out of them.
Mm-hmm.
These that don't have any beadwork on it, but has the fetish on it,
Mm-hmm.
and it has the duck bill, and I usually sign it back here at the back.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually get $50 out of those.
Yeah, that's great.
And plus, if I'm doing a demonstration or something somewhere, and like I said, you know, kids have got a real big place in here.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's kids around there, and if there's one of them, I mean, if there's just one that can really show me that he has a really big interest in learning how to play this flute,
Mm-hmm.
I will give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, I mean, I bet you I've given away probably as many as I've ever sold.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, I mean, like I said, it's kids. They
Sure.
just,
So you kind of leaving those seeds out there.
yeah.
Yeah. How long do you think it takes to make, say, just a plain one like this?
Just the plain one, I bet you I could whoop one out in about 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I could probably make one make sounds in about 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you know, that's the burning, getting it tuned,
Right.
and then the shine that's on here.
Mm-hmm.
I put it under a jewelry buffer. So
mhm.
it's nothing on there. It's just buffed to a shine.
Right.
That's all that there is.
Yeah. Do you use a drill to make your holes, or
No, I'd use a hot screwdriver and just burn them in there.
is that right? That's interesting, because I noticed they were dark, and I wondered how you.
Yeah, if you use a drill or anything, it's going to splinter, and it's going to kick out, and it's just going to splinter out, and you'll have lots of little things that looks kind of like this here running up and down there. And this one here, I don't know what happened to it. All I know is that it's got a little splintered spot in it. But you burn them in there, and it keeps it from splintering.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you made the little two-hole whistles that are more traditional, that you think are more traditional anyway?
Yeah, as far as Choctaw goes, yeah, I've got some. Hold on just a minute.
Sure.
The heavier ones make. Yeah, this one here is more of the traditional Choctaw flute.
Mm-hmm.
It's just got the two holes down there. It's usually played by just, you know, them right there.
Now, have you taken any of your flutes to Mississippi at all?
No. You know, I haven't been to Mississippi in probably 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
But now
no.
we still have, we got a lot of Mississippi Choctaws visiting on.
Yeah.
Have you visited with any of those folks? Or?
No, I haven't, you know.
Yeah.
And let me see. Those there, like that. And, oh, this is not the one I was looking for. I guess this will work. Just show you a different sound
Mhm.
of how much of a bigger flute, what they make here. It's a lots heavier sound.
Mhm.
And that one there is a tune from one of them, I think his name is Paul Hacker. He's from out of Oklahoma City. He's also a flute maker. He's
Mhm.
Choctaw and Cherokee.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he's the one who I kind of bought a little book off of to learn how to play. And that there's kind of where I finally started trying to learn how to play. Because, you know, I made flutes for 5, probably 6 years before I ever even learned how to play a tune. You know, all I did was sit around and kind of poke around on the holes, you know, listen to this and listen to that, and never could really pick anything up. But I went and talked with Hacker, and that's where I kind of finally decided to try and learn.
Yeah. Now, have you gotten to talk to other flute makers besides him?
Yeah, I've talked with, I don't know if you know Tommy Wildcat.
I do, yeah.
Okay. I met up with him several years ago. I bet you he wasn't even making flutes then. I had taken a group of firefighters to Bull Holler and for chainsaw training, and him and his sister come up to do stomp dancing, and I learned how to do a little bit of stomp dancing while I was there.
Did you?
And then I understand that later on that he became a flute maker, and I understand that just this past year he became the Native Americans the Native American Music Awards Flutist of the Year.
Yep.
And then he and I run into one another down in Greenville, Texas here about 4 or 5 months ago, and got to sitting around there laughing and talking and carrying on, talking about old times,
Well, he had kind of a similar experience to you. He didn't really have much to go on, and
Yeah.
kind of recreated things.
Yeah. And there's what is his name? I can't even think of his name now. He's a Cherokee from out of Texas. He's an older man. Coyote Old Man.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I know him, and he and I, he comes to the Beavers Bend to the Ouachita every year, and he and I, we sit around there and play flute together every now and then.
Yeah.
He's a good man.
You haven't met any other Choctaw makers?
No.
Or know of any yet?
Actually, there's a Cherokee, not Cherokee, but a Comanche that just started here not too long ago, about a year ago. Quintus Herring, that's got the Museum of the Red River.
Yeah.
They have a little camp over here every year at the museum. They invited me to come over there, and give a demonstration. And Lewis Clark, Comanche, he's married to a Choctaw lady, and he was wanting to learn how to make a flute because he had just come from his family reunion over in Lawton, and he had a cousin that was a flute maker, and of course he didn't have the time to stay there and have him to show him, and so he come over to where the kids were, and whenever I was giving the flute demonstration, kind of showed him a little piece here and there, and last time I knew he was being a flute maker. And his grandson is picking up on it, and I understand that he can come up with some pretty good little tunes.
And they're making cane flutes, or they're making not wooden ones? And
I also understand that he's making them out of PVC pipe.
Yeah.
Now I've seen a lot of them make them out of PVC pipe too. I mean, it's cheap. They all got the same consistency of the roundness from one end all the way to the other.
Yeah.
And but for me, I don't call that traditional.
Yeah, you haven't gone plastic yet, huh?
Right. And but plus, Indians have been known to adapt to change.
Sure.
And same as the cedar and birch and juniper pine flutes, they're routed out with a router these days, because like I say, Indians they've been known to change, and they utilize everything that white man brought to them.
Yeah. And invented much of their own.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've got lots and lots of great flute players out there.
Yeah.
And like I said, and there's not a one that is wrong. Because like I said, as long as he can make beautiful music come out of it, and he's doing something right.
Sure. Now, were either of you folks speakers? Did they speak Choctaw?
My mom was. My dad, he spoke very little. Yeah, but my mom, she went to Wheelock. She went to school over there. And what I understand is that she didn't speak a word of Choctaw until she got there. And of course, they were forbidden to speak their native language while they were there. And she had always told me, said there was a little girl there from Mississippi, from Choctaws, that was sent there to school, and she couldn't speak a word of English. So they kind of swapped out. She taught the little girl how to speak English to keep her from getting in trouble, and plus she learned how to speak Choctaw in the process. So that's how that worked out. And we picked up little words here and there, along the way. And plus, they were, I guess, even, all of them that did speak Choctaw didn't teach their children that because it was pounded into them that you weren't supposed to speak it, and in order to keep their children from getting in trouble, they didn't teach it to them. Because, you know, I mean, you can even go out on the streets today, and you can see a couple of old Choctaws standing out there talking, and if non-Indian come up and, you know, start listening, they'll just stop, you know, and just kind of wait until you're gone, and then they'll go on back to what they were talking about, because, I mean, it was, like I said, it was kind of pounded into them.
Well, it really wasn't in your interest to speak about it.
Right.
Yeah. Now your wife's not Choctaw.
No.
And she's from this part of the country?
Yeah, she comes from Redland.
Okay.
Just right there on the other side of Mud Creek.
Yeah. Yeah. And you got one child?
Yeah, his name is Blaine. He's 11 years old.
Yeah. Now, likely he's going to be speaking more Choctaw than you are, right, isn't it?
I'd like to see that one day.
Yeah.
I really would. And he knows what I'm talking about whenever I say something to him, you know. Because, you know, like I said, we picked up words here and there, and then later on, they started bringing in the Choctaw classes. And I went to the Choctaw classes, and, you know, and I kind of picked up a little bit more here and there, but, you know, I'm kind of used as a history thing, because, you know, I'm kind of like Charlie Jones, you know.
Right.
I'm big on Choctaw history, and I'm a firm believer that, you know, in order to even know where you're going, you have got to know where you have been. And so, you know, whenever I go to Choctaw classes, you know, and sit around there and yak and talk and carry on, and they kind of ask me about certain things because they know that I'm big on Choctaw history.
Yeah. Now you got any other things you're interested in that you make, or?
Oh, I do a little bit of silversmithing every now and then. You know, silver is just so expensive that, you know, that if you mess up, then you've messed up good silver. So I don't get into it real heavy or anything like that. You know, it's just another one of my hobbies.
Yeah.
You know.
Now you've been all over now. But would you really want to live somewhere else?
This here's what I call home.
Yeah.
I think I'd much rather stay here and just keep calling it home.
Yeah, that's good. Well, what else should we add? Anything?
I don't know.
I can't think of anything.
Well, you know, Michelle Fitch.
I do.
Well, about 2 years ago, whenever they had the Southern Foresters Convention over at the museum, there was a lady there by the name Donna Henderson. She's a writer for the Department of Agriculture, the Forestry Department's their little editor every month, that whenever they send out news. Well, this was during the time that after my partner got killed. And so anyway, this was during the time that they were going to have the Olympics. And so she sent in a 100-word story about me, about my flutes and about my trip to Wyoming. And so they said that, you know, they was looking for